Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam ala Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. On this second of Safar of the year 1439 after the Hijrah, coinciding with the 22nd of October 2017, and on Damana we continue with our studies in the work al-Aqeedah al-Waasitiyyah, and we come to the text of the author as he states, وهو سبحانه قد جمع فيما وصف وسمى به نفسه بين النفي والإثبات. And he, the glorious, he has gathered within what he has described and named himself with two things, in nafi and al-ithbat, negation and affirmation. Negation and affirmation. The explainer here, he mentions what the author has mentioned here is a beneficial guideline concerning how one should have iman, concerning how one should have faith in Allah and in His names and His attributes, His beautiful names and His lofty attributes. And this is by way of premising upon two foundations. And those two foundations, they are nafi and ithbat. The first, negation, and the second, affirmation. As for negation, then one is negating from Allah that which opposes or that which is opposite of His perfection from the varying types of fault and deficiencies. And also, when it's negated from Him is any partner, anyone comparable to Him, anyone that is equal to Him in His attributes or in His rights that are specific to Him. So everything that negates perfection from His attributes, then it is negated from Him, the glorious and the exalted. Now,
can you just repeat that first line? You said nafi, negating from Allah that which is opposite of His
perfection. That which is opposite of His perfection. Now, it is also possible, though, that there is negation, but the intent is other than negation. So again, it is possible, though, that there is negation, but the intent is other than negation.
Are you referring back to the book, or this is in general? Or?
A general principle concerning Allah's attributes. So again, it is possible that there is negation, but the intent is other than negation, meaning that the intent is actually ithbat. Meaning that the intent is affirmation. So it is possible that something is negated from Allah, but the intent is ithbat. The intent is affirmation. And this occurs every time within the book in the Sunnah where Allah negates something from Himself. For a principle, every time Allah negates a quality from Himself, He is affirming the perfection of its opposite. So again, every time Allah negates something from Himself, He is affirming the perfection of its opposite. So let's take example with that. Name something that Allah has negated from Himself.
Injustice.
Injustice. Good. So Allah has negated dhulm from Himself. Allah has negated injustice or oppression from Himself. So in His negating oppression from Himself, he is affirming his attribute of justice. He is affirming the perfection of his justice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. In Surah Al-Ikhlas, Allah negates what from himself? Qul huwallahu ahad. Say Allah is sui generis, right? Allahu samad. Allah is a samad. Then you say, lam yalid wa lam yulad. He neither
Begets nor is begotten.
begets nor is begotten. Good. So he's not born, so he does not give birth and he's not born. He's negating these qualities from himself. So if he's negating these qualities from himself, he is affirming the perfection of his opposite, which in this case would be what?
He is everlasting, eternal.
Good. El-Hayy, right? The ever-living. So he is affirming the perfection of his life. So because his life is perfect, he is not in need of someone to give him birth in order for him to have life. And he is not in need of giving birth in order for him to sustain his life or lineage or anything of that nature. He's not in need of any of that because he's perfect in his life. We follow?
Right.
Likewise, another simple example in Ayatul Kursi. La ta'khudhuhu sinatun wala nawm. Right? So he is not overcome by fatigue or sleep. So he's negating that from himself. Again, in his negating fatigue and sleep from himself, he is affirming the perfection of his opposite. He's affirming the perfection of his life. You follow? So whenever Allah negates something from himself, then this is showing that these are qualities of deficiency. These are qualities of being incomplete. So to beget or to be begotten is a quality of imperfection. To have fatigue or to slumber or to rest, these are qualities of imperfection. And Allah is perfect, so he will not have these qualities of deficiency and imperfection. So we understand that principle, yes? As for ithbat, as for affirmation, then affirmation gathers between two matters: general affirmation and specific affirmation. General affirmation and specific affirmation. As for the general affirmation, then this is like praise in the absolute sense, perfection in the absolute sense, being majestic in the absolute sense, thus and so. As for the specific affirmation, then this is the detail of Allah's knowledge, the detail of his ability, the detail of his wisdom, his mercy, and anything other than that from his attributes. So in a general sense, a person may say that that Allah is omniscient, that he knows all things, right? Generally. And we affirm that. But then specifically, we could also affirm that he has knowledge of every leaf that exists on every tree that exists, and exactly what is going to occur throughout the cycle of that leaf, and when it falls, exactly where it's going to fall. Now that's detailed knowledge. We affirm both for Allah. So,
what were the two examples? You said Allah specific, Allah's knowledge. Allah.
So it's a general affirmation, specific affirmation. General affirmation will be Allah knows knowledge of, he has knowledge of everything.
Right.
Specifically will be knowledge of the cycle of a leaf.
Right. I mean, the different specific examples you gave initially. One more. You said Allah's knowledge, and you mentioned two other items.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, his knowledge, ability, wisdom, mercy. Knowledge, ability, wisdom, and mercy. So as for Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, as for the people of Sunnah and unity, the people of tradition and unity, then they adhere to this methodology. And this methodology is as-siratul mustaqim. And this methodology, it is the straight path. It is the path of those whom Allah has bestowed His grace upon them. So they adhere to this beneficial path. And by way of this, His blessings are completed concerning them. By way of this, their theology becomes valid. And by way of this, their character becomes complete. Because by way of writing one's Aqeedah, then one is able to complete their character. أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا. As he sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated, the most complete of the people in their faith are those who are best in their character. As for who traverses upon other than this path, then you will find that this individual quite often has a degree of deviancy, either in their Aqeedah, either in their theology and spirituality, either in their character, either in their conduct. The author continues, and the author states, so Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the people of Sunnah, the people of tradition and unity, they do not diverge away from what the messengers brought. And this is a very important point. The people of Sunnah, they do not diverge away from what the messengers have brought. Plural. As for the Siratul Mustaqim, as for the straight path, then it is the path of those whom Allah has bestowed His grace upon them. So this reference to the straight path is coming from where? Surah Al-Fatiha. Those that Allah has bestowed His grace upon them, that reference is coming from where? Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha, right? Good. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. The path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace. Now, who are those people that Allah has bestowed His grace upon them? The author states here, from the prophets, the truthful, the martyrs, and the righteous. So these are the people who have traversed that straight path successfully, so that we can emulate them in their traversing of that path, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel with regard to theology, spirituality, character, and moral conduct. They've done it successfully, so we have example in how to do it.
Who were they? They were the messengers,
the prophets, the truthful, the martyrs, and the righteous. And here, what the author is making a reference to is Allah explaining the Quran with the Quran. So as we mentioned in Al-Fatiha, we say, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace. Who are those people? We learned about them in Surah An-Nisa. وَمَن يُطِيعِ اللَّهُ الرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, then they will be amongst the ranks. They will be in the company of those whom Allah has bestowed His grace upon them. مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. From the prophets, the truthful, the martyrs, and the righteous. وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. And what a superb companionship they are to have. You see how it connects? So when we speak to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, when we speak to the people of prophetic tradition and unity, then we are speaking to the people that adhere to the way of these people. They adhere to the way, to the methodology of the prophets, the truthful, the martyrs, and the righteous. So from here, we are looking to explore their example as they come throughout history in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as you are going through Revelation and contemplate upon Revelation, you are trying to identify these people and take lesson from them in their lives and how they traverse upon the straight path. This is the way of Ahlul Sunnah. So when you are hearing about these stories of the prophets, they're not just stories to you. You're trying to figure out how to traverse upon the straight path the way that they did. When you hear about the truthful, such as Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, for example, how did he traverse upon the straight path so that you can do it how he did it? Likewise, the martyrs. For example, Asiyah. May Allah be pleased with her. And her example. And the righteous. For example, Maryam. May Allah bestow salam upon her. And we look at their lives in this type of a way. And this is what it means to be from the people of prophetic tradition and unity. And this is how we bring about unity, by a collective of people striving to adhere to that and be upon the straight path in that type of a way. This is what we are talking about beyond dogma. It becomes practical. It becomes a way of life. So from this point, the author enters into the next topic of discussion, and it is a more detailed discussion on having iman, having faith, and what Allah has described himself with. But now we look at it with regard to how he has described himself in his book. So we'll be looking to now how Allah describes himself, his attributes as they come in the Quran. This becomes our next larger topic of discussion. And the author opens this discussion by speaking to Surah al-Ikhlas, by speaking to the chapter of sincerity. And of course, we'll mention this next week, but he mentions here that al-Ikhlas, that it equates to a third of the Quran. Our homework for next week is to explain how Surah al-Ikhlas equates to a third of the Quran. What exactly does that mean? What is it talking about? Does that mean that I just need to recite Surah al-Ikhlas 3 times and it is as though I have recited the entire of the Quran? Does this mean that whenever I am in my prayer, I only ever need to recite Surah al-Ikhlas? As we do have an example from the Sahaba, after reciting al-Fatiha, whatever he will recite of the Quran after al-Fatiha, he would always or quite frequently close with Surah al-Ikhlas. So can we say that it just suffices us and this is all we need with regard to the Quran? And if not, then again, what does it mean that it equates to a third of the Quran? هذا والله أعلم صلى الله على محمد.